Okay. Thank you, PY.
You're welcome.
Well, as we said, this is the beginning of our masterclass time, which we've been doing every summer since 2020. And so for those that are joining us for the very first time or experiencing this for the very first time, to have as much time as possible to teach, we are cutting out the music. But of course, there's a wonderful playlist on YouTube. You can catch Soul 21 and catch the music of CSC at any time, all the time. But now we're going to get into the class. So if you're joining us for the very first time, we are studying Open Your Mind to Prosperity by Catherine Ponder. So that's a book that you can order. It's available digitally as well as in print. So you can order that to read and study along. We're going to encourage you to continue to read throughout the week. But what we're doing through this class, which is something that I think is powerful and something that is rarely done, we take you through the text line by line each and every Sunday for this entire summer. We're going to add our commentary. We're going to clean some things up. Lord, there's some things to clean up. Because one of the things for us as African-American New Thought teachers is to very much call out some of the problematic things that are in these texts. Mm-hmm. Catherine Ponder is a beloved teacher, but there's some problematic things, right? Emmett Fox is a beloved teacher, and there are problematic things, right? And I think it's important that we do that, because otherwise it's sort of like subtle violence as a person of color reading these things, and you're like, that doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. And you recognize that there are principles of truth, and so you try to look past it. Well, we're not just going to look past it. We're going to speak to it and name it so that we can actually take the absolute universal spiritual principles of truth that are there and apply them.
Yes, because we love Catherine Ponder.
Yes.
There is so much good here. Mm-hmm. We don't want you to miss the good.
Right.
We want you to consume the good, to live from the good. Mm-hmm. And so it's important, and it excites us because we wanted to do this, and we have done this since the very beginning of CSC. But the masterclass is our opportunity to go line by line, as PG just said, and answer questions and all that good stuff that you wouldn't have the opportunity to do if you were reading it on your own.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's get into the text.
Yes.
And we're starting not at the beginning of the intro, because I want to make sure that we get as much of chapter 1 in. So if you are following along in the book, we're starting here at the section that says what this prosperity formula contains in the intro. All right. What this prosperity formula contains. Why have some people literally gone from rags to riches through following the ideas given in these pages? Well, in this present book, the author is sharing with you her succinct formula for prosperity, which has evolved slowly over the years and which she gives in its completed form here for the first time. Open Your Mind to Prosperity, originally written in 1971, is a sequel to the Dynamic Laws of Prosperity. I mentioned that earlier. Again, this is why you want to check out our sermon series that we taught on that. Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, which was first published in 1962. From the time the author conducted her first prosperity class in 1958, and from the time of the publication of her first prosperity article in 1959, the results have always been the same: an enthusiastic request for more material on the subject and countless unsolicited reports of what at times seem like miraculous results by those who use these prosperity methods. There are many success courses and books available today, and they are all good. Anything that helps you to open your mind to prosperity is worthwhile. But most of those courses and books cover only about 1/4 of the formula given in this book. They usually explain how to create your prosperity mentally first, as shown in chapters 3, 4, and 5 herein. But unless you learn how to clear away the psychological blocks about prosperity, as discussed in chapter 1, unless you then learn how to cleanse your mind to make way for prosperity, as explained in chapter 2, and unless you follow this up by giving your prosperity a spiritual basis, as shown in chapter 6, just creating your prosperity mentally first is not enough. You want to say something about that?
Please highlight, underline this, because this is the truth. We find many times in our coaching and our spiritual counseling that people, because society likes to latch on to a little idea and live from it, and that's important. But there's more to it. And so what happens is people's prosperity is short-lived because they haven't done the mental work to clear out the old ideas. They haven't done the mental work. They don't even recognize what the subconscious beliefs about prosperity are. And so she's right.
Yeah.
These are the actual things that you need to make sure that you're doing. Because we found that you can call things in. You can manifest your butt off.
Yep.
But can you keep it?
Exactly.
Can you hold on to it?
Exactly.
And the reason you might not be holding on to it is because what's going on in this paragraph is not in alignment with the whole formula for prosperity.
Exactly. So again, clear away the psychological blocks about prosperity, your thoughts, beliefs, and expectations about prosperity, some you may not even be aware of. Then cleanse your mind to make way for prosperity, right? So now you clear the runway so the plane can land. Yes, right? And then knowing that prosperity has a spiritual basis, you can't get away from that. That's something that a lot of people do. And this is why we think, thinking about the sermon I did a couple weeks ago, what about the billionaires? See, we look at someone who is a billionaire and we think they must be prosperous. They may not be, because prosperity has a spiritual basis. And so we need to look at the whole picture, right? And then also, yes, we create prosperity mentally first, but that's not enough.
It's not.
The acts of creating your prosperity mentally first may excite you into bringing about temporary results. Hello. Then you sink down into frustration and despair again as these results fade away. And you say to yourself, it doesn't really work. Okay, hands up, yes. If anybody had that experience, we just want to make sure that we're in the right space. We're talking to the right people. Let me know if you've had that experience. Yes, you watched The Secret. You used some law of attraction principles. You created a vision board. Things were popping. Things were happening in your life. And all of a sudden they began to fade away. And you began to doubt and question whether this stuff really worked or whether it was just some random experience that happened. By learning the entire formula for prosperity as given in this book in both part 1 and 2, you will find that it becomes an automatic process which you can easily invoke again and again, and you will enjoy doing so.
I love the idea of automatic process because it's like it becomes habitual. It's just the way you operate. It's not something that, oh, wait, this is a different situation, so I got to figure out a different way. You apply the same tools, the same rules to prosperity in whatever area you're working on. And many times people forget that. They think because now they want $1 million as opposed to $100,000, oh, wait, I got to change. They think that
Same
because
process.
they want whatever it is in their lives, and it looks a little different, that the process is different. That's not the way it works. That wouldn't be loving. That wouldn't be loving if the rules changed on you every time. We know how people operate. They might change. But the way this works doesn't change.
Right, because we're dealing with a process, a scientific law that always works for everyone equally. For instance, when your prosperity seems to slacken, you will know that you must again consciously open your mind to prosperity by reminding yourself, often, I am the rich child of a loving father, so I dare to prosper. Or I am the rich child of a loving mother or mother-father, right? So I dare to prosper. Then you will return to the cleansing laws of prosperity and again form a vacuum in both inner and outer ways. You will begin anew to create your prosperity mentally first, probably making a new list, getting fresh mental pictures and affirmations to work with daily. And you will happily use 10, the magic number of increase, in your giving. And I want to say this now because this is important, right? Because some of these things is so subtle, right? Form a vacuum in both inner and outer ways. This is another place that people get tripped up. And we're going to come back to this again. A lot of people are doing the outer work. I know people that have created whole businesses around supporting people and creating vision boards, and that's wonderful. And vision board parties, but that's outer, and that's only outer. And people think, oh, just if I just do this, then I can manifest. There's an inner and outer part to it. right? And actually, when we get involved, then we get to evolve, right? That's the evolution.
And the idea of forming a vacuum, we've talked about this many times. Nature abhors a vacuum. So when you clear out the space, something has to fill it. What are you filling it with?
Right.
Yes, you can have your vision board and see the images, but if in the back of your mind you're still saying this ain't working, if in the back of your mind or subconsciously you believe you're not entitled to the things that you see, then there is no space for the new to fill.
Yep. Yep. In due time, you will probably go from 10% to larger giving as allowed for tax purposes and as provided by the Mosaic Law many centuries ago. This one prosperity technique alone made millionaires of many of the Bible's great people, as well as many of our modern millionaires. You will also enjoy using the prosperity methods described in Part 2 and find them helpful towards demonstrating results. The author's invitation. In the intervening years since this book, Open Your Mind to Prosperity, was written in 1971 as a sequel to The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, 1962. The author has recently written yet another book, a sequel to the sequel, entitled Open Your Mind to Receive, 1983. You will find these 3 books an appropriate trilogy on the fascinating subject of universal abundance. As you use again and again the prosperity laws prescribed in this present book and in the others mentioned, you will find yourself agreeing with the author that it's time to prosper. And you will probably find yourself motivated to pass on this timely message to others. As you do so, she invites you to write her of your happy results and increased peace, health, and plenty. And when I hear it's time to prosper, one, because it's one of PY's songs that she gets ready to on Sunday, but I'm hearing Lizzo, it's about damn time. It's not just time to prosper, it's about damn time to prosper. So you might want to tap into that vibration.
And before we move on to the chapter, can you go back to the previous page? I am the rich child of a loving mother, father, God. So I dare to prosper. That is a powerful affirmation. There's so many in this book, and we're going to talk about them. But if you just begin there, I am a rich child of a loving father, mother, whatever that caregiving energy is for you. So I dare to prosper. It's so, so powerful. Begin to underline and use these affirmations. You'll see them all through the book. I am the rich child. That means even if your bank account doesn't reflect it, the truth of you is that, right? Because we got to clear out those old beliefs so we make room for this new reality.
Yep.
I am the rich child.
Yep. So part 1, basic methods for demonstrating prosperity. Open Your Mind to Prosperity, chapter 1. I declared war on poverty when I was still in the 1st grade. We lived in a poverty-stricken area of the South, and most of the children in my school had neither adequate lunches nor enough clothes. When my mother gave me lunch money, I just gave it away. Upon learning what I was doing, she began preparing my lunches. This made me very happy. It meant I could step up my war on poverty as I broke up sandwiches and passed them out to my classmates. Mother never was able to stop me from giving away my lunches, but when I started giving away my clothes, she objected strongly. Finally, she said, "We cannot afford to clothe the entire neighborhood, though we almost have this winter, thanks to you. I'm going to buy you one more coat, and you better not give it away." One cold winter day, I arrived home from school, obediently wearing that winter coat, but barefooted. I had just given away my shoes and socks. It was not until years later that I learned how to wage war on poverty in such a way that I did not have to give away my lunches, my shoes, or my socks. A Wall Street economist recently gave his formula for a cure for poverty. What is needed is not so much a war on poverty as an understanding of the forces that generate prosperity. It's a wonderful opening to a book because she just completely draws us in, and we can see that little girl. One of the things that I love about this example as well is where she says in the end, until years later, I learned how to wage war on poverty in such a way that I did not have to give away my lunches, my shoes, or my socks. One of the things that happens when you learn the principles of prosperity, because all of us, we want everyone to thrive. We want everyone to succeed. We want to see everyone have what they need. And unfortunately, until we learn the principles of prosperity, we try to support people via sacrifice. I'll go barefoot so they can have something. I won't wear a coat so they can have a coat. I'll eat less so they can have some. And that's a sacrificial way of operating in the world. And that's the way we've been taught to live. That's even the way that we've been taught is, in many cases, most noble. But what's true is there is a way to shift and change the world, which goes to then this quote from The Economist, right? That if we teach the world the understanding of the forces that generate prosperity, of the laws of prosperity, that would absolutely cure what we think of as poverty in our world.
It's like teaching a man to fish, right? Or a woman to fish.
Right.
If you teach them how, then they know what to do from that point forward. This is not about shaming or blaming anyone that is experiencing poverty. It's about helping them understand where the power is to transmute that experience.
Right. And also to be very clear, and if someone is hungry, we feed them first.
We do that.
We don't. Well, let me go teach you how to fish. Like, right? Right. Just want to be clear there, right?
Absolutely.
Why you must open your mind to prosperity. The forces that generate prosperity are mental and spiritual. Let's see that again. The forces that generate prosperity are mental and spiritual. You see, we already have this highlighted. You may want to highlight this. You may want to write this down in your notes. In order to conduct a mental and spiritual war on poverty, the first thing you must do is open your mind to prosperity. I came upon this great truth quite by accident. I was a minister in Birmingham, Alabama, when the worst recession since World War II hit this country. Birmingham is an industrial city. During that recession, it was so hard hit economically that thousands of people were out of work. There were breadlines. Everyone was talking depression, hard times, and lack. Finally, the government declared the city a disaster area, making federal aid available. Even as we knew this book was timely, even coming back to this, and as I was rereading this week, it's 2025. And there aren't breadlines, but people are talking depression, people are talking recession, people are talking times are hard, people are talking lack, right? And so this is why this book is not abstract, right, what we're talking about.
Right, and even though it was written a long time ago, it's still applicable.
Right. It was during that trying period that the people in my church asked me to teach a class that would point out the mental and spiritual laws of prosperity. I soon discovered something significant. Even though the people in the class desperately needed to be prospered, most of them had the old erroneous idea that it was sinful to be prosperous. They felt guilty about even coming to a prosperity class. Hello,
take a breath
somebody.
on that one.
Yeah.
Is there any of that out there for you? Is there any little elements of the idea of sinful to prosper?
You didn't want to tell anybody that you were coming to the Masterclass today.
Or that you joined the circle or whatever it was.
You were sneaking in.
Right. And if that's the energy that you enter the room, that's the energy that you'll carry through the process. And we want to relieve you of that right now.
Right.
We want to let that go right now. Forgive yourself and set yourself free because you can't be open if you're afraid you're going to be punished for your prosperity.
And it's so beautiful to know this, right? Her congregation came to her, said, please teach the mental and spiritual laws of prosperity. And yet this is what they were holding on to, right? Since that time, I've discovered that there is nothing unusual about this attitude. Most people with financial problems have a psychological block about prosperity. They have been taught in the past that poverty is a Christian virtue, that to be prosperous is somehow wicked. They have been taught that anyone who is prosperous is probably a crook and therefore subject to suspicion. In any event, he is a sinner in their minds. How in the world can poverty be a Christian virtue when poverty causes most of the world's problems? Okay. I just want to say this now before we get into this next section. I'm going to read it, and then we're going to call out why this next couple of paragraphs is incredibly problematic.
Right. And before we do that, we want to make sure that you understand you're not sinful because you want to prosper. And many of our parents and grandparents and ancestors have been taught that because it kept them bound. It kept them not wanting to expand themselves, their consciousness, what they were entitled to. It made them stay in their place. We want to expand who you are and where you live and how you operate. There is nothing sinful about being prosperous.
And so she goes on, she writes, communism has a poverty basis. An economist has said that the main difference between democracy and communism might be described in one word: plenty or prosperity. Prosperous people do not want or need communism. Not only are both war and communism caused by poverty, but disease, crime, juvenile delinquency, illiteracy, segments of the drug culture, riots, and terrorism all can be related to poverty conditions. Okay, so as we said, we will continue to fearlessly call out problematic sections in texts like these that are also, widely distributed, widely used, and widely heralded. So first of all, I think contextually, unfortunately, as she is a white woman in the United States of America of a certain generation, we recognize, and I think for those of us that are Gen X and older, we know in the United States, we know that we were all educated to think of communism as evil, right? We were educated to think of that as something completely other, right? Because it was connected to Russia and China, who were also, we were taught, were our enemies. And so from that perspective, I understand why she would erroneously say communism has a poverty basis, right? Because there are many in the United States who experience democracy here in the United States and would rightfully say that democracy has a poverty basis, right? And as we, particularly here in 2025, as we continue to see the growing chasm between the haves and have-nots, and seeing that poverty is almost required in order for the 1% to exist, et cetera, we know that this is an erroneous and ignorant statement, using that word as it's intended to be used, uninformed, right? And misinformed. And so to create this false binary of democracy is plenty, right? And communism is not. Again, I can understand the world in which she came up in, and I understand the ways in which the American mind has been brainwashed against any other form of political system or economic system. But again, we know that this just is not true. And so what we want to glean from this is what she is saying to us. And I'm reminded of Reverend Ike, where Reverend Ike aptly says, right, the lack of money is the root of all evil. We do recognize that for many, right, and also this is not all people, right? There are plenty of people that don't have a lot of money, and that doesn't drive them to crime, right? We also recognize that particularly as a Black person, when we think about illiteracy and juvenile delinquency and drug culture, well, we would have to look at how this so-called democracy of the United States helped to bring those things along, right? So to simply say that poverty is the root of these things, it's just, oh my goodness, it's highly problematic. Again, riots. Poverty is not the source of riots, but when you mistreat people over many decades, that may spur a riot, right? So was poverty the source? No, and we know that. But again, it's very important that we name this, that we call this out, because again, as I said earlier, I think if we just read this and don't call it out, it's another form of violence, right? It's another form of violence against self, and we don't do that here.
No,
we don't do that here. So she goes on, it is as though the soul of man were rioting against lack in this enlightened age, because the soul intuitively knows that man or humans are supposed to be prosperous. So how to open your mind to prosperity?
Before we go on to that, this last line, there's something about it that I'd like to clear up. It is through the soul of man we're rioting against lack in the enlightened age, because the soul intuitively knows that man is supposed to prosper. Your soul is complete, it's perfect, it's whole. And its understanding is what is really guiding you, not the external environment, not the things that you've learned. And so your soul knows where to go and how to get there. what we're doing is removing anything that would prevent you from listening to it, from following it into prosperity.
How to open your mind to prosperity. You can open your mind to prosperity by giving up that ridiculous idea that poverty is a Christian virtue when it is nothing but a common vice. Poverty is definitely a sin, not a blessing. So let's hear that. The word sin simply means error or mistake. So I want to read that differently. Poverty is definitely a mistake, not a blessing. A mistake in our thinking, right? That's very important. And so when we say poverty, this is why I love to quote Eric Butterworth here, where he says, poverty is not simply the lack of money and things, but a way of thinking and believing. And so that's what we're talking about. There's a way of thinking and believing that is an error, right? That is a mistake. And what's beautiful, though, with any error and with any mistake, it can be corrected.
Yeah, I love A Course in Miracles. Right. Mistakes are for correction, not punishment.
Exactly.
And so that idea of sin, we just remove it and replace it with the real meaning of the word sin, which is missing the mark.
Right.
We just made a mistake.
Right.
We were just taught incorrectly. Right? And so as children, we didn't know, like, wait, that's not right.
Right.
We accepted the words and the ideas and the understanding that we were given.
Yeah.
And we carried it on. And now we get to correct our mistakes and not fear any punishment for them.
As Charles Fillmore has declared in his book, Prosperity, the Father's desire for us is unlimited good, not merely the means of a meager existence. We cannot be very happy if we are poor, and nobody needs to be poor. As again, he writes, it is a sin to be poor. Now, you've heard me talk about this as we talk about what is prosperity, right? That prosperity is happiness, radiant health, success, and money. And we recognize that complete prosperity, we need to live in all of these. So when he says, right, we cannot be happy, because the reality is, and I don't know about y'all, but I've been in many times in my life of not having enough. I'm not sleeping well. I'm worried. I'm constantly looking at my bank account. I'm wondering if people are judging me. I'm scared to ask for help, or if I ask for help, I think they're judging me, or I asked somebody for help last time, can I ask again? Right? All of this stuff is going on. I am not living in any form of happiness because I'm worried. I feel like my back is against the wall, all of that kind of stuff. So we recognize that, no, it's not a happy existence, right? And so this is why happiness is a part of prosperity, right? And having money secure, again, not just means of a meager existence, but to have what we need and have more than enough to do any and everything that we need to do when we want to do it, that's prosperity.
And we've also said that the reverse is also true. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you're living in prosperity. It means you have money.
Yep.
And money is a form of exchange. It's energy, right? And so we don't just say, oh, I know they're happy because they have a lot of money. Many times they're not, because they're not living in complete prosperity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is nothing new about this idea. A century ago, a Baptist minister named Dr. Russell Conwell became very famous because of one lecture called Acres of Diamonds, which he gave all over the United States. Dr. Conwell made somewhere between $8 million and $12 million as he traveled about over a 50-year period, giving that one lecture, the proceeds of which he used to found Temple University in Philadelphia. So this is something to note if you did not know that, right? The founder of Temple taught and preached this prosperity principle. As you study his famous prosperity lecture, you discover that he was trying to break down the listener's sense of guilt about becoming prosperous. Quote, I say you ought to be rich. You have no right to be poor. To live and not be rich is a misfortune. And it is doubly a misfortune because you could have been rich just as well as being poor. Right? And he's talking about once we come into the recognition of how these laws work, right? You have the opportunity to then use the law, to work with the law or not, right? So you can open your mind to prosperity when you realize that through your study and application of the mental and spiritual laws of prosperity, you are not trying to make God give you anything. As the Bible promises, all things are yours, right? This is important, and I know some of you are in the prayer mastermind and have been in other prayer classes. This is so critical because the New Thought principles, it's all the same stuff, whichever lens you choose to enter in. We are not here trying to make God give us anything. That's not how this works. We don't have to convince God. We don't have to present our resume to God to show that we're worthy enough for this blessing or that thing. All things are yours.
And we don't have to glorify the struggle to receive from God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we run across that a lot where people talk about how hard they worked.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do that. That's man's idea of what God would do.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how God works.
Yep. And if you don't want to hear scripture, which is fine because the Bible's problematic, I keep a quote. It's in my email. If you've ever received an email from me, you've probably seen it, from the beloved childhood tale, Jack and the Beanstalk. When Jack is getting ready to go up that stalk, he's told in the original story, remember, all that the giant possesses is already yours. Mm-hmm. He wasn't going to get, Lord have mercy, that thing preaches. He wasn't going to get something that didn't already belong to him. And that's what we think, like, oh, I'm going on this adventure. I got to climb this beanstalk. I got to do it. It already belongs to you. In the beginning, God created a lavish universe and then created spiritual humanity and placed them in this world of abundance, giving them dominion over it. That's Genesis 1. You are only trying to open your mind to receive your heritage of abundance bequeathed you from the beginning. You can begin operating your mind to this abundance by declaring often, I am the rich child of a loving father, mother, so I dare to prosper. And thank you, PY, for clarifying, right? Whatever word feels good to you there as a caregiver, as a provider, use that, right? We always call out the masculine use of everything, right?
And it's so important because many times the energy of the feminine is not always acknowledged as equally powerful, if not more powerful than the masculine. And so if that feminine energy connection is what you want to use to declare, that's what you use. What we're only doing is making a connection between us and that which is all.
To our heritage.
To our heritage. We're setting up our sovereignty when we say things like this.
There was once a businessman who had his own simple formula for opening his mind to prosperity. When people asked, how's business? He had a standard reply, regardless of economic conditions of the moment. Business is wonderful because there's gold dust in the air. It always seemed so far for that man. No matter what people about him were doing or saying, he prospered. His friends would say, I don't understand it. Everything he touches turns to gold. Again, teaching within the teaching, right? How do you respond? Hey, how are things going? Hey, how's business? Hey, how's your family? Hey, how are things going? Right? What is your response? He trained himself, because this is important. There was a time I know he didn't fully believe this, but he trained himself into convincing himself that this was true. And life follows wherever our mind goes. And so then life must reflect, and this is actually neuroscientifically true, right? That whatever you build the mental processes in your brain and you create the neural pathways around, you're going to continue to, there's a confirmation that you continue to see out in the world over and over and over again. And that's what we're doing. We're changing our brain. We're reprogramming our brains around prosperity. Reports of those who have prospered. In that first prosperity class in 1958, and in scores of classes I've conducted since that time, I have observed that as soon as people realize it is spiritually right, rather than spiritually wrong for them to be prosperous, it is as though the windows of heaven were open to them. Recent reports from people who opened their minds to prosperity include a businesswoman doubled her financial income and then happily married a man of affluence after having been widowed for 10 years. A housewife accepted this great idea and soon learned that her husband had just inherited a large portion of the company for which he worked. Another housewife watched her husband progress from one promotion to another in his engineering job. They inherited money, bought a new home and 2 new cars, and after having tried for a number of years, were able to adopt several children. A young college professor obtained another degree and went on to a fine job at a much larger income at a state university. A domestic worker demonstrated a 6-week trip to Europe. A teacher was transferred out of an inharmonious department in her school to a far more congenial teaching position. One couple was able to buy a beautiful new home with no down payment. The former owner gave them his $8,000 equity. One couple's 2 children both obtained college scholarships. A woman in the real estate business got her broker's license and went into business for herself. Another realtor made her first sale in a year. Upon returning home from a prosperity lecture in Oklahoma City, a businesswoman answered her ringing phone. It was a customer with a $40 sale at 12:30 p.m. on a Sunday. The next morning, she was awakened by another ringing telephone and another sale. This was quite a change from the hard sell approach to which she was accustomed. A businessman walked out of a prosperity lecture and on the way to his car found a $20 bill. Later that week, a raise he had been trying for months to obtain for his employees came through. After opening her mind to prosperity, a young widow was able to reduce her debts by $1,700 within 3 days.
Oh, I love these examples. Now, your mind might be saying, this is a resistance piece. Oh, but that was then. This is now. Mm-hmm. If you hear thoughts or commentary in your mind like that, just notice it. Don't fight it. Mm-hmm. But notice that where the resistance to just receiving. Mm-hmm. These are examples. Yes, they're older in terms of history, but the idea behind them is still true. Yes. They can still happen now.
Yes. Not only can, they are happening now, mm-hmm. right? And one of the things that I love, these are regular people, right? Some business people, she talks about housewives, she talks about a domestic worker, regular people applying the principles mm-hmm. and experiencing powerful things. Mm-hmm. Right?
And it's not just the money things. It's all kinds of things.
Exactly.
And you'll see that throughout the book. It's all kinds of things.
Right. Because that's how prosperity outpictures. So please don't, this is one of the reasons why this was part of the sermon series on the law of abundance, right? The idea of please don't limit God to money, mm-hmm. right? Like don't do that, right? You are a billionaire, a trillionaire even in life because you have this unlimited heritage. So please don't limit your heritage to one area of life. Open your mind to prosperity, to complete prosperity. Prosperity came to all those who helped with the author's first book. You can open your mind to prosperity when you realize it pays to do so, right in the face of lack and limitation, right? One of the reasons that we're teachers, and this is a prosperity principle, a spiritual principle, right? That which you want to master, teach it. Right? I started writing prosperity articles several decades ago when I was living in one room. I felt foolish writing about prosperity, telling other people how to be prosperous when I was living in just one room. We've shared with you all the story of when we were creating, envisioning CSC, right? We received an eviction notice. We were not working full time. We equally felt silly creating and co-creating a spiritual community and knowing that we would be teaching prosperity principles and using these principles for ourselves. But what we could see with our physical eyes wasn't matching what we were knowing with our mental eyes. Mm-hmm. But I realized that I must do something to open my mind to prosperity in order to get out of that room. It took me 3 years, but when I finally moved out, I found a lovely new home. The move could have come sooner had I known the complete prosperity formula given in this book. Opening your mind to prosperity in the face of lack can have dramatic effects on your life too. Have that highlighted. I would love for each and every one of you to write that down in your notes or to highlight it, because I recognize that many of you have circumstances right now where you're like, well, I ain't got no business watching a prosperity masterclass and live stream. You know, when I got bills that need to be paid, right? I got people knocking on my door. I don't know what I'm going to do next week, next month, next year. Opening your mind to prosperity in the face of lack can have dramatic effects on your life too. Catherine Ponder is showing you that's true. We are living, breathing examples that that's true. And now you also will become living, breathing examples that that's true. This was brought to my attention by those around me while I was writing my first book. After typing the first half of the manuscript, my secretary resigned. She explained that as she had typed the manuscript, she had used the ideas in it, and her husband had been prospered so much in his sales work that she no longer needed the job. A second secretary was then employed to type the last half of the book. Before completing it, she also resigned. She explained that her husband had been out of work when she took the job, but he now had the finest engineering job of his life, one which would take him to another state. She felt that the ideas in the book had turned the tide. Finally, my housekeeper resigned. She had not seen the manuscript, but I had explained the laws of prosperity to her while writing about them chapter by chapter. As she opened her mind to prosperity, she decided to do something she had long wished to do, but had never quite had the courage: become a dressmaker. She said, "I am resigning as your housekeeper. Now, would you like to hire me as your dressmaker?"
I love that.
She has prospered in that field of work ever since. It was startling to lose 2 secretaries and a housekeeper while writing one book just because they dared to open their minds. But there's more. On the day that book was handed to my New York editor, he was sitting at his desk carefully perusing it when another editor walked into his office and handed him some money. He was startled to hear that editor explain, "Some time ago, you loaned me some lunch money. Until just a few moments ago, I had forgotten about it. My editor wrote me in triumph. How's that for fast action from the dynamic laws of prosperity?" Right? And so this is absolutely the beauty of what happens. One of the things I love to say when we're talking about prosperity, the beautiful thing is you're choosing to be here right now. You're choosing to show up for the masterclass. You're choosing to get the book. You're choosing to read the book throughout the week. You're choosing to meditate on prosperity ideas. You're already turning in the direction of prosperity. And so it's meeting you. It's meeting you. You hear me say all the time, God is paying attention to what you're paying attention to. And I don't mean that in the sense of God, a being, is paying attention. You direct God attention, right? And so wherever we're directing our attention, then the power of God then says, oh, that's what they want. Oh, that's what they want to see. That's what they want to experience. That's what they want to feel.
Yes, please, more of that.
Right? And so that's what we're directing God energy. So the God energy, you're directing it now, and by opening your mind to prosperity, inevitably, just like her housekeeper, just like her 2 secretaries, just like her book editor, it's going to come on in. It's going to come on in.
It has to. That's law.
That's law, right?
And so you might be like, okay, well but what was I thinking before? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you directed the energy. Mm-hmm. Where are you going to do it now? Because it's all about your choice from this point forward. Mm-hmm.
A report from the typesetter of this book. However, an even more updated report on the power of opening your mind and prosperity just came from the typesetter of this present book from Hollywood, California. He wrote, "I am the individual who had the personal pleasure of typesetting the revised version of Open Your Mind to Prosperity for your California publisher. This manuscript held my attention from the first paragraph to the last, and I feel much better both mentally and emotionally for having had the experience. Open Your Mind to Prosperity especially opened my mind to certain undeniable truths, most of which I knew early in life. But as I became more caught up in the grind of work and daily living, I had come to dismiss their importance." That sound like somebody in the room? If it does, give me a yes, yes, or a hands up, a thumbs up, whatever it may be. At one time in my life, I had been an ardent believer in prayer, yet I never knew how to effectively word my prayers, nor did I know that my prayers should be accompanied by visualization of the desired good. This book has brought home the art of dynamic prayer so concisely and succinctly. I had prayed for guidance in my life, but never dreamed it could come to me in this way through typesetting Open Your Mind to Prosperity. I thought you should know. And I, the author, thought you, the reader, should know.
I love all these examples of how it works and how easy it can come. And many times we're stuck in the how, and we're not living in the now of embodying these teachings. The how is not your business.
Never is, never will be.
But what is your business and your choice is to open your mind to prosperity.
So here's the meat, right? Because she's gotten us excited now, right? And this is the meat of the chapter right here, the true definition of prosperity. So you see we have highlights, You want to write these down. This is part you want to come back to over and over again. You can open your mind to prosperity when you realize the true definition of the word. You are prosperous to the degree that you are experiencing peace, health, and plenty in your world. You are prosperous to the degree that you are experiencing peace, health, and plenty in your world. Prosperity includes peace of mind. A businessman recently wrote, "The study of prosperity certainly does bring peace of mind. Since I took up this study, my wife has stopped griping at me and my mother-in-law has started leaving me alone." I think that's actually a very problematic statement, right? Patriarchy. But what I will say, prosperity including peace of mind, and it doesn't mean, I love to quote Willis Kinnear here, right? Peace of mind doesn't mean the absence of problems or challenges to address. But the peace of mind, the inner peace that you have, allows you to see all of those things clearly and to make choices and decisions. You don't feel like your back is against the wall. And so now you're like, oh, I got to do something right away, right? You're frantic, right? And in your choosing, in your addressing, in your doing. Peace of mind, you see, it's like, oh, okay, I need to do this. Let me put these things in order. What makes the most sense? Let me break it down into smaller chunks. That's what peace of mind brings.
Right, because there's no noise in the mind. There's no fear, no doubt, no worry. And you take inspired actions, right? You're not just doing things to be doing them. They're inspired by the guidance you receive. That's the kind of peace of mind I like.
Prosperity includes harmony. A young musician who attended one of my prosperity classes had been out of work for a number of months. Immediately after the class, he got the finest job of his life. Later, he wrote, "I had a nice surprise from my study. I took it up because I needed a job, which I got quickly. But at the time I employed prosperous thinking, my wife and I were estranged. We now have been reconciled and are happier than ever. Prosperity certainly includes peace and harmony." Right? That may be in your relationships. Again, of course, that harmony and peace of mind. Right? This is important. If there's disharmony, then we want to look at that because that's a evidence of not being in prosperity. Prosperity includes health. A housewife was taken by her husband to a prosperity lecture. This woman had been in pain for 12 years from a chronic ailment, which drugs could temporarily alleviate but could not cure. When the drugs wore off, the pain returned. On the way home from the lecture that night, she realized that for the first time in 12 years, she was free of pain without using drugs. That was 8 years ago. The pain has never returned. This couple has gone on to financial success also, but their main prosperity demonstration was a physical healing. So this is, again, is important to note that physical healing, health is also a demonstration of prosperity, right? So you may be someone you're like, yeah, I have plenty of money, I'm good, all of that's fine, right? But you recognize that the disharmony or the discomfort in your life is around your health, and so absolutely, this can be demonstrated.
And I want to also put in a note here that yes, this woman was pain-free without medication. But as we know, God is in everything.
Thank you.
Everything.
Right.
And so if that is what you need to create harmony, take the medication.
Right.
But if it's not, it's okay too.
Right.
So we're not saying that this woman is better at living in prosperity because she doesn't need the medication.
Right.
We're saying that in her body, in her life, in her experience, that was what she wanted.
Right.
Okay, so please don't beat yourself up because you need what you need. God is in everything.
Right. Absolutely.
Including the medication, whether you take it or not.
Right. Absolutely. Prosperity includes financial plenty. People sometimes reflect, since prosperity includes peace and health, prosperity is more than money alone. True, but what's wrong with prosperity is money? Absolutely nothing. An important way to open your mind to prosperity is deliberately to open your mind to the idea that money is spiritual, that money is a part of your heritage.
And how does that land? How does that land in you? because it's not just reading these words or listening to us read the words. It's about embodying the truth of these words. And if there's any dis-ease or discomfort with this idea, just check in with yourself. Not beating yourself up, we're just checking in. The idea that money is spiritual. Because everything is energy and everything is God in that way. We don't make money God.
Right.
We realize that it comes through that same energy that is God. I hope that clears that up.
All right. So this next section, we'll read through a bit of this section because I'm looking at the time. But I do want to also say this at the outset because I think as a Bible scholar, as a seminarian, I think she oversimplifies some things here as it relates to the Bible and talking about there are millionaires in the Bible. I think it can be helpful, right? But again, I also want to recognize that there's a lot that she's ignoring as it relates to the text, right? So there are millionaires in the Bible. It helps in opening your mind to prosperity when you realize that the great spiritual leaders of the Bible were prosperous people. Many of them were literally millionaires, right? They seemed to know that prosperity was a spiritual blessing and poverty was a curse. In the first book of the Bible, we find 4 millionaires among the great Hebrew leaders, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. The Bible vividly describes their wealth, which is true. We have often thought of Abraham as the father of the Hebrew people, which he was, but he was also a millionaire. The scriptures declare that his substance was very great and that the Lord blessed him in all things. Let me just say this, right? Because one of the things, these origin stories in the First Testament are that they're origin stories, and they've become in some ways tall tales. We don't truly know if Abraham was a millionaire because it was important to write a story about this progenitor of a group of people, to write about him in a way that all of these things were true. But we must recognize that these stories got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so by the time they were actually written, because they were first an oral tradition for thousands of years, by the time they were written, they've become, again, what we would consider tall tales. I love to always use the example of here in the consciousness of the United States, where we have these stories like about George Washington, I Cannot Tell a Lie, The Cherry Tree, right? Which aren't real stories, but they were designed to create this image of our first president. They were designed to place him in a certain light and actually deify him, right? In many ways. And we see that's actually depicted in places in Washington, D.C. So I need to say that. It's not that, yes, in the text, it describes him that way. But again, I think, there's some generalizations here that need to be called out. When I first mentioned in a lecture that Abraham was a millionaire, a startled Texan asked if Abraham was a millionaire, how many oil wells did he have? I replied, I don't know. Now, of course, at that time, oil wells were not a thing in the sense of oil wasn't, the oil as we know oil, right? It was not being used to heat homes and, of course, for cars, etc. I replied, I don't know, but I'll find out. When I checked the biblical description of Abraham's wealth, I could not locate a single oil well for him. But as I studied carefully the passages describing his wealth, one verse stood out. Abraham was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. When I happily reported to that skeptical Texan that Abraham had been a rich cattleman, he was so impressed that he insisted that Abraham's cattle were probably Longhorns, originally from the Lone Star State. In spite of my protest, he left that lecture a very happy man.
Well, what really he needed was somebody to give him permission to believe. And so that's really what that is telling us. He needed permission to believe what he really wanted to believe. And so the skeptic in him, as she says, asked for proof.
Yeah.
And how many of us have a skeptic in us about prosperity or these teachings? We run across it all the time. We're not dismayed by it. We realize that because we've believed certain things for so long, sometimes we need additional verification that it's true. But really the truth of it is, how do you feel when you hear it?
Right.
How do you feel when you read it?
Yep.
That's how you'll know it's true for you.
Yep. The Bible is a prosperity textbook. I wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. Right. And again, I want to say this as a biblical scholar and seminarian, this is a highly problematic statement. One, because it's reinforcing the false idea that the Bible is one unified text. It's not, right? There are portions of the Bible that teach prosperity principles. There are portions of the collections of books that we call the Bible that teach prosperity principles. That's true. But the Bible is not a textbook, because I could also say that the Bible is a war textbook, right? I could say that the Bible is a demonization textbook, right? There are portions of the Bible that teach prosperity principles. The word Bible, the closest translation we can get to is the books or the library, right? So no more would we say our library is a prosperity textbook, right? Because it's by the word, we know that a library is diverse, right? There are diverse voices, diverse perspectives, diverse points of view. So this is just a highly problematic statement.
The other piece that makes it even more problematic is because of where we place the Bible in terms of reverence and following it. And many times the idea of the Bible as a prosperity text has been misused.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And so people that look at, Christianity and the way prosperity is talked about in many circles are misusing it and convincing people that they have to study it or give in a certain way. And this kind of goes along with that if you think about the Bible as one book and if you think about the Bible as a prosperity text. Right?
So she goes on, you can open your mind to prosperity when you realize that the Bible is the greatest prosperity textbook ever written and begin studying it from that standpoint. The Bible is filled with stories about bread and fish. This is a marvelous prosperity symbolism. The bread symbolizes the substance of the universe, which we mold and shape with our thoughts and words of prosperity. The fish symbolizes ideas of increase. The word gold appears more than 400 times in the Bible. There are between 3,000 and 4,000 promises in the Bible, many of them literal prosperity promises. Some theologians claim that there are near 8,000 such promises. Again, as one who knows and studies the text, we can't make blanket statements about promises in the Bible when many of them were not written to or for us, in the sense that most of them, if things were written to a specific group of people for a specific period of time, and it was only for them. Right? Everything that was written in the Bible is not necessarily universal and definitely not for all of us. And this is why we have to learn to read the text properly. Jesus' interest in prosperity is shown in the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. Many of Jesus' miracles were prosperity miracles, true. And many of his parables were prosperity parables, true. When Jesus said of the rich young ruler how hard it will be for those who trust in riches to enter the kingdom, it was because he knew that this rich man was possessed by his possessions rather than controlling them. A spiritual consciousness of prosperity gives you control over your possessions rather than allowing your possessions to control you. And this is something that P.Y. echoed earlier, and is absolutely true, right? That this is what opening our mind to prosperity supports us in doing, being, and becoming, to establishing that spiritual consciousness that gives us control over them, right? Otherwise, we will be controlled by them, right? We're learning the laws so that we can control, deliberately make use of the laws. There was a time in your life that you didn't know how a stove or an oven worked. Right? You didn't know how to use the utensils in the kitchen and everything necessary to prepare a meal. Once you know that, then it doesn't become your enemy. It doesn't work against you, right? You are now in command and can create whatever it is that you want to create easily and effortlessly. So it is with prosperity principles.
I love that idea because, right, once you learn how the stove operates, you just do it easily and effortlessly. You don't think about, wait, it said, the manual said I got to. And so that's where we want you to get to the point where you're not looking to the book because you understand it. You've integrated it. You've practiced these ideas enough that you know they're true. You're living from them. Your oven light is turned on when you need it turned on.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So we are really at time, and we're going to move into giving in just a second. We encourage you to read the rest of the chapter and then reread the chapter from beginning to end. You can come back here on YouTube or on Facebook, come back to this, listen to what we have to say, listen to the commentary, and listen to that again to support you throughout the week. Don't move on to the next chapter, right? Read and reread chapter 1. And next week, we'll begin with chapter 2. In the same way, we'll move through the text.
And as you, we hope you're creating your own prosperity journal, because you'll be using, you'll be having a vehicle to apply and to write and to journal about your experiences as part of your daily prosperity and as part of your daily spiritual practice. There's so many good affirmations in
There's
this.
more coming.
There's more coming. This chapter is full.
Yeah.
It's full of affirmations. If you're wondering what to think, pick up one of these affirmations. And they're all throughout here. I actually highlight mine in a different color so I can instantly know where to go to if I want to. There's just so many of them.
Yes.
And these are the things we want you to remember that are true. Where we have clarified what was incorrect, it's clarified for all time now.
Right.
Focus on what's true, what's helpful.
Yes.
In this book,
Yes.
in this chapter.
Yes.
Use these affirmations. If you find yourself down and out and questioning, take an affirmation and go to the mirror and say it to yourself over and over. If you find yourself in conflict with these affirmations, then do some healing work around it, because all it's showing you is where you're in resistance to this. That's okay too. Remembering it's psychological change that we're doing here.
Absolutely. And so in this moment, it is time for giving. It is very easy to give to CSC. You can go to our website, celebrationsc.org/give, or you can text your dollar amount to 347-744-9500. If you choose to text to give, it is a $10 minimum for text to give. What we say and what we teach each and every week is, as you give, you receive. So when we think about this idea of opening our mind to prosperity, we want to think of it very clear. I cannot give if my hand is closed, right? And so once I give something to you, my hand is now open. I've now opened myself to receive, right? So that's why it's as you give, you receive. Giving puts you in the place of receptivity, and we don't think about that, right? We're taught that like giving puts you in the space of being better than somebody else, or giving puts you in the space of being noble and, oh, I'm helping out this person or I'm helping out that organization. No, that's not what giving does. Giving puts you in the posture of receptivity, because it is a circulatory loop. As you give, you must receive. It's a boomerang. That's law. I exhale, I inhale. I exhale, I inhale. As I give, I receive. As I give, I receive. And so it is with our finances. And this is why we affirm the spiritual truth each and every week. All the money that I circulate, returns to me multiplied.
In
a never-ending cycle.
Of increase.
And enjoyment. To that I say amen.
Amen.
Ashe. And so it is.
And so it is.
And so it is. Yes. Well, we are so happy as we kicked off the first masterclass. We look forward to next week. Again, as a reminder, read and reread chapter 1. Stay with chapter 1. There's more good stuff there that we couldn't get to. PY referenced it. There's so many powerful affirmations in this chapter alone. Come back to the masterclass. Come back to what we've taught. Hear our words again, and then be prepared as we begin with chapter 2 next week.
Right. We're doing this together. You don't have to rush ahead.
Yes.
We're reading it together. You're not expected to take a test on it. You're allowed to integrate what works for you. As I like to say, take the meat, leave the bones.
Absolutely. So with that, we love and appreciate you. We trust that you'll have a wonderful remainder of your day, remainder of your Sunday. We look forward to you joining us for the Momentum Prayer Call on Wednesday, and then we'll be back together next Sunday for week 2 of Open Your Mind to Prosperity, the Masterclass. Bye for now.
Bye for now.